You're wrong about the Google Pixel 9 Pro, and all the Pixel 9 phones are going to have the Tensor 4 in it. Maybe. So I wanted to talk about this because the Pixel 9 is going to be here in just a couple of short weeks, August the 13th. Mark your calendar, and we'll be at home watching it together. I did not get invited, which does not surprise me, but I am looking forward to it because we're going to get new colors, new Tensor G4, presumably some new camera stuff, Android 15, supposed to be some new game-changing stuff with the chipset and AI, and we'll see some new AI features introduced. And maybe we'll see the enhanced zoom show up. That was supposed to be here for the Pixel 8. Maybe that's what's game-changing, is they're going to deliver on their promises this year. Probably not. So I want to talk about something though, because a lot of people are waiting for the Google Tensor G5 that's going to be made by TSMC, like it's the second coming, right? Like we had just this great relationship with Snapdragon, whatever TSMC was making the chips for the Pixels before, right? There have always been things to complain about the Pixel. The Pixel phones, there's always a lot of things they do really well, and then there's like a but this, but that. And the funny thing is a lot of people's perceptions are different. Like mine, I think that the Pixel phones get better over time. They get the quarterly feature drops, they get new features, they get some refinements, they get smoother. And then you have on the opposite end of the spectrum, on that belief system, is Marques Brownlee, MKBHD, who thinks that they get worse over time. And I just don't see that. Maybe he and I doubt we'll ever sit down. I've seen the guy a couple of times, but we don't talk. And not for any good way or bad way. We just, he's up here on the list of tech celebrities. I'm down here, like parking the cars. So I don't think we'll ever have a philosophical discussion on this, but I think they get better over time. But I'm in the boat where I think the Tensor G3 has been pretty good. I think it's incrementally got better. Of course, the original Tensor, that one had its issues. A lot of the stuff, though, has been kind of a recurring theme, mostly the modem, heat, and battery. Other than that, it's been great, right? So when the Tensor G4 gets here, it's supposed to, I saw a benchmark score that said about 30% better in single core speed or something like that. Anyway, most stuff I saw is about 10 to 20% increases across the board. That's fine, but then you're going to have somebody come in interstage left and be like, oh no, it's still not as good as a Snapdragon 8 Generation 1, which is just stupid and foolish to say that. It's not even remotely in the same conversation. There's a lot of changes, architectural, cores, upgrades and things like that, the Android upgrades, and then just the way the different stuff is done. So even though the Snapdragon 8 Generation 1, and it was a very powerful chipset when it came out, but it was terrible on battery, it had its own issues, but this is not like a 3-year-old chip. There's a lot of stuff that Google does. They customize the core, they design stuff. Samsung makes it in their Foundry, which is not as good as TSMC, and there is some weight to that. Even I believe with the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, they didn't let, or it was either that one or the 3, they didn't let Samsung make any of their chips because with their 4 nanometer process or 3 nanometer process, whichever it was, they just couldn't get it as good. They were not producing as the same quality of chips, and this is true when it comes out to the quality of chips and the design and the way that they're made at these chip foundries. They come out and they have certain tolerances and certain variances, and the ones that were coming for Samsung just were missing the mark. So Qualcomm and Snapdragon, Snapdragon, Qualcomm, TSMC, they're like, okay, Samsung, you're not making chips for us this year. Samsung's had a long history with Qualcomm and TSMC. They've made a lot of the same chips. Qualcomm actually is what I believe started the death spiral for LG whenever it came to the G6 before. If you can remember back that far, the Samsung Galaxy S8 got the Snapdragon 835, which was supposed to be revolutionary, big upgrades. They got rid of TouchWiz. They started the whole One UI stuff, and they really have made a big step from then. And if you notice with the LG G6, it didn't get the Snapdragon 835. It got the 821, and that's because Samsung had an exclusive right to push their phone out first with the Snapdragon 835, and the LG phone always came out earlier. So LG couldn't get that chip until later on that year, and they were already behind the power curve, and they'd already put out their G6 with the 821, which was an okay chip. It was the same one that was in the Pixel, but it just wasn't on the same level, and things started going downhill from there. So Samsung made about half the chips that year. Samsung's been making they've been making Snapdragon chips. It's not just TSMC. Qualcomm's work with them too. So when it comes to the G4, like Samsung knows how to make chips, but the problem is they're just not very good with their own chips. And there's always this battle that goes back and forth, like, well, the Tensor, it's a Samsung Exynos chip, it's not, it's a customized chip, blah blah blah. Look, that debate's going to be over next year, but this is where I think people are wrong. I think a lot of folks think that the chip is just going to go off the charts once the TSMC Foundry starts making them. Google's still designing it. Like, there's the whole linchpin in the whole equation. So whether you believe that the Tensor chip is an Exynos chip or not, Google is still designing it. They're still just saying, hey, put the TPU in there, use this modem, here, use this GPU, set the cores up this way. That's not going to go away once TSMC starts making it. So I think a lot of people are going to set themselves up for failure, because I've been seeing this for the last 2 years. Ever since we got the announcement that in 2025, Google is switching to the TSMC instead of Samsung, like, oh, I'll wait for the Pixel 10. I'll wait for the Pixel 10. I say something about the Pixel 8, I'll wait for the Pixel 10. I say something about the Pixel 9, I'll wait for the Pixel 10. And it's got to be like this game in the comments where I'm like, well, I'll wait for the Pixel 15. I'll wait for the Pixel 20. The Tensor G3 is a very good and serviceable chip. I've had no issues with it. The only real hesitation I would have is if you're a gamer. If you're like a gamer, you want to play top-end games maxed out, the best battery life, best heat management, get a Samsung. Get a Red Magic. I mean, there's some other phones that have active cooling, better heat vapor chambers, and all sorts of stuff. Heat sinks that help dissipate heat. That's an issue with the Pixel 8 and the Tensor G3. It's not the best when it comes to heat, but that only is really experienced in my experience with, well, high-end gaming mostly. Battery life for me has been pretty decent. The heat's been pretty decent. The overall experience has been pretty decent. I've had more heating issues and thermal issues and throttling issues with my iPhone 15 Pro Max than the Tensor, but everybody's brainwashed. Like, the Apple fans are brainwashed, so you can't talk about that. Don't worry about it. But if you're a Pixel fan, people talk about that stuff, and it's one of those things where I just think that people are more in tune with the specs and the hardware. One, it's always been this way with Android. You get a new Samsung phone, a new LG phone, a new Pixel phone. It's like, oh, what spec, what chip, what GPU, what RAM, what this, and then people get the iPhone. They're like, oh, yeah, they don't even notice or care that it's still 60 hertz and it costs them $800. It's just a different set of criteria, or a different set of people that pay attention to this stuff. So I think the Tensor G4 is probably going to be good. And I'll get the Pixel 9 Pro, probably the XL, and that's exciting this year. The Pixel 9 Pro and the Pro XL, we're going to get that bump up. I believe what I was seeing in the materials, it looks like they're going to 16 gigs of RAM. That'll be huge. The Pixel 9 is going to go to 12. And then we're going to have the Tensor G4, and it looks like the Pixel 9 Pro will be 6.3 inches. I'm really excited about that. Finally, having a smaller Pro Series phone with the Pixel. And then the Pixel 9 Pro XL will be 6.8 inches. So I think that's going to make a lot of people happy, really make people consider moving over. And then, of course, we're looking for the Pixel Watch 3, new Pixel Buds 2 Pro. This is going to be the biggest Pixel launch ever in the history of Pixel products, I think. I mean, probably the most exciting since we had the Pixel book and all that stuff years ago with the Pixel 4. So here's the thing, though. I think that some folks might be disappointed next year when the Tensor 5 comes out and it's made by TSMC. Just because it's made by a different foundry does not change the underlying design and the way that Google goes about making their stuff. And they claim in their marketing material, at least from what I'm hearing, that this is going to be game-changing. Google sets the table for their own board games, and then sometimes they knock the pieces off. So we'll see how game-changing it is, but they have an opportunity here. This is a big opportunity because we're talking about, we've got some cool new colors. I like the new design. I know some people hate it. I like it personally, but I think it stands out more. I think they'll probably make a push with this, and we'll see how good this Tensor G4 is, whether it's game-changing or not. But yeah, I'll be glad when we move away from Samsung, because I think TSMC does make better chips that are better specs with better tolerance variances and better performance and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's still going to be Google's game, their sandbox with that chip. So it's not going to be like, oh, all of a sudden it's a Snapdragon chip. It's just going to be made by the same people that actually put the Snapdragon chips together. So I think the Tensor G4, I'm not writing it off. We should finally have a new modem. We should finally have some new components. It should be a 3nm processor. So I think there's going to be some good, exciting stuff here, but just don't get wrapped around the benchmarks. And I talked about this extensively with the last phones. Quit worrying about the benchmarks. We have like a 3 gigahertz chip, for Pete's sake. it will do everything you need it to do well, efficiently, and as long as we can get all-day battery, we get good signal, we get reliable updates, and Google shows up and actually delivers like they're supposed to. And we've been seeing incremental evidence of this over the last couple of years prior to the setback with still not having enhanced zoom, which I will not let them live down. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Mark the date, save the date on your calendar, August 13th. We'll see what happens then. But I just wanted to talk about this because I keep seeing this, the most talked about thing I see in the comments all the time. Waiting for the TSMC, waiting for the Tensor 5, waiting for the Pixel 10. And I guarantee probably half or more of those people, once we get to the Pixel 10, it's going to get here, and then they're still going to find something to complain about. They'll be like, oh, it's still a Tensor. They're like, well, what are you going to complain about now? It's a Tensor that's made by TSMC, not Samsung. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Waiting on the G4. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you like the way the new ones look based off the pictures, if you've seen them? If not, definitely Google that. Are you excited about the Tensor G4? Are you excited about new AI? Are you excited about the new Android 15 stuff? Let's talk about it. We'll have some fun with this. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.